The ANC has embarked on a secret mission to destroy South Africa's economy. Let's expose this hidden agenda. So the ANC, through self-enrichment, has decided to systematically cripple South Africa's economy and ruin the country's employment prospects. This has been primarily done through nefarious BEE and other race-regulated dealings. But before we get into this expose, could I please remind you to subscribe to the channel? It's completely free, and all you have to do is click on the subscribe button in the bottom left corner of this video. Now let's get into it. So for those of you who haven't seen my BEE video yet, this is my chart that I created tracking black unemployment in South Africa from 1995 to Q2 of 2024. The reason why 1994 is not included in this chart is because data on specifically black unemployment was not yet readily available in 1994. Q2 of 2024 is actually the most recent data available where the unemployment rate is broken down by race. And so that is the reason why the graph isn't updated further. Now, before we reveal the true extent of the ANC's hidden agenda here, it's very important that I rebuke some criticism directed at the chart. So while the overwhelming majority of people have provided great support, and that is truly much appreciated, thank you to everybody who shared and liked the chart, there are some people who criticized it, claiming that for some reason this chart is inaccurate because it doesn't show how white people have a much lower unemployment rate than black people and how they're benefiting regardless of BEE, and BEE isn't that bad. Now, what people who make this argument might not realize is that if you look at my description here, I do not at all give a narrative of BEE being anti-white or even mention how it's affecting white unemployment. If you look at my claim right here, it explains this chart shows how BEE and other race-based policies have failed to improve the employment circumstances of black South Africans since their introduction. And so what's actually really ironic is that if I was to provide white unemployment in the chart, it would actually only further prove my point. Because while white unemployment hovers around 8%, black unemployment is almost 38%. And that's just the strict unemployment rate of people who are considered economically active. And so in actual fact, these critics are only proving my point further, which is that black people are worse off than ever, even with all this race-based legislation. There's then the claim that my chart does not prove that race-based legislation has increased black unemployment. Again, this is not the point of the chart. If you read my explanation, the chart exists not to prove somehow that race-based legislation caused black unemployment, but rather that black unemployment remains rife and has even increased despite race-based legislation. And so it proves that race-based legislation has done nothing to address the black unemployment crisis, regardless of what the cause of the crisis may be. So now that we've clarified that, it's very important that I explain why BEE has not only not solved the black unemployment crisis in South Africa, but also actually crippled the entire South African economy. So earlier this year, the Free Market Foundation, in partnership with Solidarity, released a study in which they determined exactly how much money has been lost in the South African economy due to BEE compliance measures. So if we look at the key takeaways of the study, we see that between 145 billion rand and 290 billion rand annually has been spent on direct compliance costs. We also see that 192,000 jobs have been lost annually due to this. And this is understandable because, of course, the more money you're spending on compliance, the less you actually have to spend on other operations. And this could be expanding the business and therefore requiring more people to be hired. We also see that GDP growth has been reduced by 1.5% to 3% per year as a result of BEE compliance. There's then also the claim that BBBEE benefits have been largely captured by politically connected elites. And then, of course, South Africa now ranks 139th in GDP per capita, down from 87th in 1994. So for those of you who are interested in reading through the entire report, I have included a link in the description box below. So credit to the Free Market Foundation and the Solidarity Movement for conducting this study. Now that we've covered the widespread consequences of BEE, I'd like to zone in on how the small group of BEE elitists have been able to cripple the economy thanks to this enrichment scheme. So, Professor William Gumede of the Wits School of Governance explained that R1 trillion moved between 100 politically connected individuals through BEE. And we see in this article from the Daily Investor that he explained that BEE across Africa, I assume they mean South Africa, failed terribly because it focused on benefiting a small group of connected individuals rather than a large group of people. Gumede stated that the government had asked him to conduct an assessment of black economic empowerment in South Africa. And as he explained, conservatively, R1 trillion has been moved between under 100 people since 1994. The same people have been empowered and re-empowered over and over. I'd like to show you a graphic that really shows just how economically crushing this amount of money truly is. Here we have a line graph showing how GDP in South Africa has changed over time, courtesy of the World Bank. So, if we look at the current year, GDP in South Africa reached $400.26 billion. Now, if we are to convert the R1 trillion into dollars at the current exchange rate as of the 14th of November, we see that R1 trillion equates to $58.4 billion. And so this $58.4 billion is worth 15% of South Africa's GDP in just 1 year. So imagine that under 100 people have enjoyed BEE benefits worth 15% of the entire South African economy's GDP for a year. This is a staggering figure. And let's also not forget how these people received this R1 trillion. We know that BEE beneficiaries receive their benefits by way, first of all, of employment, and so they receive it through salaries, and also through being shareholders of companies, and so they will receive dividends and perhaps they sell off their shares over time, who knows. But ultimately, this money that they drew out of companies could have rather been used by those businesses to, first of all, expand their operations as they grow over time. This could have been put into hiring new people. It could have also been put into expanding the amount of goods and services that they produce, and therefore boosting their revenues and ultimately contributing to raising South Africa's GDP. But instead, at this moment in time, the World Bank forecasts that South African GDP growth in 2025 will be a mere 0.9%. And so as you can see, the ANC has succeeded in its secret mission, whereby they've decided to enrich their small inner circle of elitists through these BEE enrichment schemes while crushing the economy as a result. Thank you very much for tuning into this video. If you found it informative, please remember to subscribe to the channel for more content. Also, share my graph far and wide so that more people can learn the truth of what's really going on in South Africa. Until next time, I'm Matthew Cohen, and this is the Power Pod.